Hello and welcome to the Six Pixels Under podcast. I am NS, and I realize I have my voice playback on. Let me turn that off. We're doing it live. Can y'all hear that, by the way? Whenever I have that setting enabled, I just disabled it. But can y'all hear me speak twice? I do that whenever I'm warming myself up for vocals, or if I'm like singing or something, just to practice, like, the playback and how my voice will sound and stuff like that. But yeah, what's up, everybody? It's the 24th of July, um, which doesn't sound as cool as the 4th, obviously, but um, 2026. And there's a couple like random topics I found around the internet, places like Massively and MMORPG subreddit, like the usual suspects. We go there for a lot of content. Um, but also I wanted to talk about there's like some two, I guess, pretty big announcements. Well, actually, I would say there's like three big virtual world MMORPG announcements, and I'll start with this one. Sorry, I forgot I have it on my other monitor. Um, there it goes. All right, so one of the big announcements that came a month ago was that Throne and Liberty had doubled their world size, and removed the RNG gear stats. Um, they even released a roadmap too, as you can see, detailing kind of how they're going to be adding, more content to the game and some of their changes. And to be honest, I hadn't actually really even heard much about this, which was strange. Apparently it's because it's only in Korea, so I wonder when is it gonna hit the US? What's this update called? Nix? Yeah, I don't actually like prior to this do any research. I like to do the research as I'm actually figuring it out. Um, because for me that's more of what a streaming format is. Very produced content is what my Death of a Game series is for. Um, so the new territory is Nix. Why is it spelled differently here? Does anyone else notice that? Nix is the nickname of my dog. My dog's name is Nixie, actually, ironically, but could just be a translation thing. But yeah, this is like a pretty big, update. Considering the trailer is still in Korean, my guess is that it's not released yet to the US. I mean, this whole thing is translated. Um, and this was about a month ago. But I thought that they were releasing their updates pretty much at the same time, right? Wasn't this one of those rare instances where like there wasn't that much of a delay? Yeah, I mean, look at that. That's only like actually it's still a lot. It's still almost a year. But I thought the content actually caught up by like season 10 or some shit. Yeah, I'm looking into it and it's like um the best way to do this is to check like a previous update, like let's say like the Leap update. I'll show you how I do research. Let's look this one up. I probably need to type in some context. um, so that happened a year ago. And that was in the US. So let me put KR, see if that helps my results. Yeah, so no, that was the older ones. Mm. Ah, this is the Korean update. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Now, these links are to the huh, interesting. It sends me to the Korean site. Well, I guess we can just see like if I go to the American site or US site, if it'll change. Let's see. Um, or can you change the location? Isn't that weird? Isn't there just usually like a way? Oh, here it goes. Weird, but it's still in Korean. It's kind of weird. Corn chips, 2201. Are you Jewish? Yeah, I'm Ladino, I guess you would say. Like I have Mexican Jewish ancestry. Um, I don't know anything about them. And actually, we discovered this on stream. Well, not on stream, but like as I was on stream, like most of the OGs in in the chat or in my Discord, they already know my whole ancestry. Like, we've gone through the whole like song and dance many times, and don't get me wrong, it's entertaining, but I think most of the OGs are pretty bored of hearing about my, you know, 6 different ancestries or whatever the fuck they like. I mean, that's how I feel. I thought you guys got bored of that stuff, but if y'all want to hear more stories about it, just let me know. Um, but I'm trying to find if I go to news, there might be a chance for me to look for it here, but it seems like I'm on the Korean site. So I'm kind of confused by that. Maybe because the updates are happening on Steam. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe if I go to let's see, Throne and Liberty. This could be where Amazon's publishing their updates. So let's see like the what the discrepancy is. Okay, so 4.30. They don't call their updates the same thing. God damn it. Are you kidding? They literally don't call their updates the same thing. Oh wait, no, here we go. Update. Okay, okay. Okay, okay, here we go, here we go. All right, let me look for one. Update Chronicle. What the fuck does that mean? Okay, here we go, here we go. Check this out. All right. So the first raid was added here. Uh, the first raid. Like, look, guys, I'll be honest. I can read and I would say barely read and understand a little bit of Korean. I have no idea what this means. I'm not gonna lie to you. So their number scheme, I don't understand it. So I'm not gonna pretend to. But so what? When was this update? This was okay, June 26, 2025. So this was last year, right? Um, let's look at Steam now. Where the heck is Steam? Oh, there it is. See if I can find the raid. I don't know if this is it. I don't think it is. Huh. We might just have to brute force Google with this. Let's see if it changes. It does not. Um, all right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're going to search it like this on Google. There we go. We got a trailer. So a trailer will give us like a date so we can kind of figure out. So yeah, we were right. It was in the summer of 2025. Um, let's see if it talks about Altar of the Chaos Witch. We found it. Uh-huh. It's called something different, I think. Throne and Liberty. I mean, I'm seeing it pretty much the same day, right? Oh no, it's these fucking websites are so annoying. Now, I'll explain what I mean by being annoying. They don't specify that they're looking at the Korean patch notes, which, you know, would be helpful to put whenever you're trying to like make an article about something. Because if someone clicks on this, especially like evergreen wise, and they're gonna try to figure out like what the fuck are you talking about? um Loud and clear. What's up? Avatarks? Is that how I say it? Do a video on Worm Online. I have maybe a dozen contacts, including myself, all the core players from 10 years ago, and it fell off hard. Worm Online is definitely going to get covered because I think Notch is very influential and very interesting. Hey, love your content. A weekly stream would be nice for this channel. Yeah, I'm not totally like into streaming enough to do it weekly, and I've tried it before. But yeah, it's just especially now, like as much as I'm writing now, like I would just rather put that time into working on another video, you know? Like partly because streaming is just not my like favorite kind of way to produce content. You know what I'm saying? Like I like making videos in the Death of a Game series. And writing it the way that I write it. That's like very enjoyable for me. This for me is honestly a lot more about social. It's about letting people see more about me as like a person. And you know, it's kind of always been that way since I started streaming. And what I found is that it makes it more rewarding that way for me when I treat it more like a way to interface with people who, you know, love my content, don't love my content, kind of love my content, or just discovered it. I mean, that's the thing with the stream is that you're talking to all of those kinds of people. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it looks like, you know, as far as we can see here, see, yeah, we're pretty much talking about a relatively similar release schedule because they eventually did catch up, even though they released 1 year later. Now, just out of curiosity, wow, the update had almost a complete negligible difference in the big scheme of things, to be clear. If we actually zoom in on this timeline, or sorry, we zoom in on the timeline, it's a pretty significant bump. I mean, it's like a double, which is pretty significant. But the thing that people misunderstand with MMOs, especially, this can apply to other games too, like multiplayer games and MORPGs and shit, is if your game is living and dying on single updates and it doesn't already have a healthy population, a single update is going to very much struggle to maintain that, unless it specifically ironed out things that maybe people had problems with before and made the game more approachable, so on and so forth. So like, if you look at that here, it was able to keep that for like about a month and then dropped, you know, 4,000 players less than what it had before. Um, and now it's, as of what's playing right now, is pretty much back to what the numbers were, slightly better, back before the update. And so, like, statistically, and I'm not the best at math, but if I can figure this out, you guys can figure it out too, which is that basically, like, if you want to figure out how that works or how to approach that, just do a ratio or do like a fraction. In fact, you can even just Google it. Watch this. You can just be like 5,300 and then do like 984. And look, it'll just give you a ratio. Which, of course, if you guys, did like the basic math stuff, you know that that's 40%. So like, you can do that, and then you can even go down over here and compare it to the number over here and see that it was a 60% decrease, right? Like, so just like, I'm not good at math, like genuinely. I'm just typing it into the calculator. But I understand what a trend is and kind of how to follow it. And so like, something that I've seen said a few times, and this is actually a good teaching moment, I feel like, is people will constantly say, oh, well, they killed this thing right before it was just about to do bonkers. And I actually saw that here when I was randomly looking at this ESO thread that was sadly talking about how the devs are worried if they can even continue to function as they lost half of their team. If you haven't heard, essentially Microsoft decided finally to start actually like heavily managing their IPs that they purchased, because they were losing a lot of money. And sure enough, they focused on ZeniMax Online, which is a bit of a weird case. And I'll explain ZeniMax Online for those that aren't really familiar with it, because this is the weirdness of ZeniMax Online is kind of why the game is the way it is, and I'll explain it. ZeniMax Online does not answer to the Elder Scrolls team. They have almost, as far as I've been told and like context, very, very minimal contact with them at all. So now think about that for a second. Imagine you're making an MMO or an online RPG, and you're making it in a very established universe, one that has like 6 games and tons of lore, and you're not even able to like really contact the people who made those games. And even just structurally, because the companies weren't under the same companies. ZeniMax Online was not the same Bethesda Game Studios, right? Like, they're not the same studio. They're literally different companies. And it was owned by the ZeniMax parent studio company. So it was like this weird, like, and that actually led to a lot of problems in the game, I think, personally. It's probably why many things were able to let fly in some ways too. Some of the bad parts of ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, sorry. But when I was like scrolling through this, just reading people's reactions, because I don't really like keep up with this subreddit that much, MMORPG, but it's interesting every now and then. Sadly, in a more entertaining kind of way than like learning anything. But down here, you scroll down and someone said here, damn, it felt like ESO was heading in a good direction and just met with the industry layoff hammer. Now, look, I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of studying into ESO lately. Last time I checked, they did have relatively good numbers, like almost like 800K subscribers, which is pretty damn good. But I don't exactly know if there was anything more unique lately or not. And in fact, I think one of the last expansions wasn't very liked. So I kind of like question this right here. And then this too, like New World was the same. The moment the game was heading in the right direction, they pulled the plug. And this is just I something I've noticed about people when they feel strongly about something is they don't care about like the veracity of something, a claim, or the legitimacy. They don't even know if this is true, but they feel so strongly that they feel like that must have been the case. And I've talked about this before, but this is a good teaching moment because I think it really shows how much people misunderstand this kind of stuff. Um, so check this out. So this is a Turnum, and right before they got canceled, their numbers were, let me see, when did New World? When was this announced though? 6 months ago. So at the beginning of the year. Like, do you kind of see what I'm saying? Like, there's a blatant misrepresentation. And look, I'll let you guys choose if it's like on purpose or not. And what I mean is like, I'm not quick to assign like malicious intent, even if somebody's like an asshole, like online, because that could just be the way they speak. Maybe they're trying to joke with you, even if they're maybe not so good at it or whatever. Like when somebody says, "Oh, New World was on the up and up," I genuinely think if I'm going to steel man their position, aka like argue for them, I'm going to say that they're talking about this part right here, this bump. The problem was is that the game got announced to be shut down months later. So meaning that after that month, it already lost 41,000 of its players, which is an absurd amount, right? Like that's not normal. And then after that, lost even more players. This is before any announcements were made at all, right? So like, and you might be saying, why do you care so much about this? Well, obviously this is my job to like chronicle this kind of shit. I'm the nerd on the case, if you will, but like it's more so that like when people change history from strong feels over like historical fact and like, you know, what actually happened, it actually can change the conversation about things a lot. And sometimes that can really misrepresent things. For example, when Star Wars Galaxies went into NGE, its new gaming experience, the reason it did that was actually for a good reason. And that's something that like I spoke to Raph Koster about, the creator of Galaxies, and even he agreed, which is that there were problems before. The game was rushed. The game was unfinished. There were problems in the combat. It wasn't approachable, especially compared to industry standards at the time with like WoW and other, games like that. So they had the right idea to think like, well, we should make a change, right? The problem is they didn't just change the combat, they changed the entire basis of how the game functioned. so, so they basically pissed off everybody. And there's a rule in game design which is like you can piss off like, two groups of people. But if you're pissing off like every group of people, all of your audience, I mean, you're gonna get rained on like Helldivers did. But yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, so when you kind of see this stuff, like the numbers here, ironically, after the announcement, didn't really even change that much. You notice that? Why do you think that is? Like, if you guys are just like theorizing, why would you think the numbers wouldn't change that much? Well, it could be people coming back and wanting to experience the game before it dies. But my hunch is that that's because these are the hardcore players who would have kept playing the game till it died anyway. How do I know that? Because I've been one of those hardcore players who played Galaxies until they killed the game. That's kind of my origin story into SWTOR, aka Star Wars: The Old Republic. And yeah, so you see what I'm saying? Like, I see this lie mentioned a lot. Not all lies are malicious. Sometimes those are called like white lies. But you just have to ask yourself, like, why would somebody misrepresent what the history of New World was, why would they tell people that it was doing better than it was before? Well, because it was doing better for a short time, right? So that could just be like that memory is very strong because it's also based on feeling and fact. You see what I'm saying? And then, like, the problem, if you're wondering why is it even relevant, the reason that you don't want to like fantasize about something like that too much and not face the reality, which is that it was not working out. And by the way, this is after they made the expansion free. So meaning like the majority of the content that they made for the game was made free. And even after that, people didn't stick around. That means that there's a problem with your game. And it's very foundational because endlessly creating content for it will likely not fill that void, right? Like think about Conan Exiles. Conan Exiles was a game that launched horribly, like unfinished. But why do people stick around? Why did it still make a bunch of money? Why did people still play it? Because it's a actual survival game, unlike New World was. No, like Conan Exiles was an actual survival game. You can build a base. You can attack other people's bases. You can level up your gear. You can progress. So even though there wasn't much story content or like content around the map in Conan Exiles yet, they still had the basis of a survival game to carry them on. New World doesn't have that because they abandoned that, and they abandoned it after we alpha tested the game. When I say we, I mean, you know, me and the, you know, a couple dozen other people that tested. We played a very different game than you guys played at live and that everyone played after the game came out. And so, you see what I'm saying? Like this stuff goes deeper than just like the feels for a short victory. Like I'm a detective because I like to like dive into like the deeper stuff. But I simultaneously like to show people that you also can figure this stuff out too. Which I think is, you know, my job as a detective. But all right, let's hone in some more here. That was just one little talking point. We talked enough about Throne and Liberty. But yeah, when you see a big update and you see population jump up a bit, but then jump back down, what that usually means is that like you got the players who quit the game because there was nothing else to do to come back. The problem is because the game is still designed the same way, they come back and they just beat the game again. And that's just rinse and repeat. So interestingly enough, Des actually brought this to my attention. Final Fantasy XIV had a mobile game that was supposed to come to other territories, but started first in China. It actually got canceled, which was kind of surprising, to be honest. But then you kind of like go through this, and I remember I read something really interesting here. This comment here probably would have seen more success in the West than it did in China, and that one just made me laugh because China has more mobile phone users than almost America has people. So yeah, there's a bit of a difference there. All right, here's a meme I wanted to respond to. The Korean MMO cycle. Wow, look, a new KMMO. The monetization seems fair this time. I'm so excited. By the way, the monetization seeming fair part, I haven't seen that to be true in like the past like 6 major KR releases. And what I mean is that like if you look at the KR releases, the only thing that people argue is going to somehow be more fair is purely vibes. Once again, you see how vibes can get you in trouble again? Meaning there's no logic. Nobody said anything. There's no promises of any less monetization when a game comes over to the West. None of that is guaranteed. Like, in fact, if you look at like Amazon Game Studios and many other, you know, studios who have covered ports or Western releases for Eastern games, they almost never really decrease the amount of pay to win. In fact, Try On Worlds, most famously with like Arcade and different games like Rift, made the game more pay to win than the East did. So just I think that's a little bit like memes aren't meant to be overly serious, but memes also have truth in them. And it's just like the monetization never really does seem fair if you're looking at it from a perspective of pay to win. And that's because culturally in KR in Korea, their market functions differently. I've talked about this before, but it's important that I cover this again and again and again, which is that the black market in Korea, in terms of like video games and being able to buy gold, buy accounts, buy power leveling, you name it, is actually like illegal. Like the government made it illegal. Now you might be saying, how does this affect anything? Well, essentially what it does is it makes it to where now the companies control all of that market. Those markets are astronomically large. Like black market, gold selling websites and key selling websites and this kind of stuff has been around since like 2001 and I've known about it since back then. I used to buy keys because I didn't have access to a credit card. So I would trade different like value for things and then suddenly like on Marquee Dragon, I would buy like a game card. So you see what I'm saying? Like the reason that KR's market works that way is because it's functionally a different market. Now you can throw in cultural reasons too. For example, this is not KR, but one of my friends who's Chinese told me that in Chinese culture and argued in many Asian cultures, their belief, there's a word for it in Chinese, and sorry, I don't know any Chinese, but it's like a word that basically means like you having more money and more privilege is just kind of like seen as like the right of your success, right? Like that's the concept. So essentially like the concept of buying an item wouldn't be frowned on in a culture like that because it would be seen as you just realizing what is your power or potential. Does that make sense? And that's how they described it to me. And I thought that that had a lot of crossover with, KR market as well, specifically with like the pay to win stuff. Then talking about this little second point here, a normal video game is $70, not a big deal to spend some money to keep up. I guess that's arguing like when a game's free to play. One thing that you guys have to realize is that part of this problem is because you're basing it on a flawed premise, which is that a large amount, if not all, Western MMORPGs aren't free, and they weren't free at launch. There's very unique examples like RuneScape, and obviously some other ones, but like largely speaking, all of them had box prices and a sub fee. Some of them just had a box price, most uniquely, like ArenaNet's games, aka Guild Wars. You see what I'm saying? So when your game goes free to play, that's an oxymoron. When you see a free to play game, you should be thinking in your head, this game is free for me to play, but to what extent, right? Is it free to try? Is it, free to tease? Is it actually free to play where I can get the majority of the things done through the game in the free ways? Is it a freemium kind of service like RuneScape has, right? Like free to play has never truly meant free to play. It's just essentially to describe it in a very like off cuff way. Free to play means you can play much longer than the other players and eventually largely reach the same amount of success. Do you see all the qualifiers I had to throw in there? A player with the, premium services is going to have that advantage. So even a sub fee and free games is an advantage, like Albion Online, and obviously RuneScape and many other examples too. Do you see what I'm saying? And then moving to this, the last or the third slide, most people have quit, but the devs are putting out a big gear catch-up patch to bring everyone back. The thing is that when a game is foundationally built in a certain way, unless they foundationally change the game, like its monetization, no amount of promising is going to change that. So for example, ArcAge had a number of re-server launches. Why did they never really kind of like work? Well, the reason being is because the game is built at its core on what's called labor points that you get, a certain amount of every day. But doing skills and leveling things up and crafting uses these points. How do you get more of these points? You spend money or you buy the premium service. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, unless you remove the labor point system in ArcAge, the game will pretty much always be pay to win because they're always going to have to monetize it as a free game, since it's a free game, in a way that's going to have ways that it needles at you to try to make money. In the case of labor points, it's not just a needle, it's like a fucking 12 gauge shotgun blasting you away every time. And then the final one is, what do you mean the game is dead? The servers are still online and the cash shop is still up. Um, I I don't quite get that one, but that one's just kind of funny, I guess. Because people do say that even in my videos all the time. Oh yeah, this is what I'm covering right now. I'm covering the Lord of the Rings Golem game. I'll be writing that today. Yeah. Random news: Tencent acquired PlanetSide, which is kind of weird. See, look, check this out. That's Tencent, and there's PlanetSide. It even confirms their products. Weird. Isn't that crazy? I wonder what they're gonna do with it. From Massively OP, we have a little bit of discussion to get into. The daily grind. Is there MMO discourse you're tired of seeing? And Bree Royce goes to talk about, or goes on to talk about earlier this month, two different MMOs, Ion 2 and EverQuest Legends, revealed their monetization plans in the same week, and it was exhausting. To hear angry gamers tell it, both games are egregiously pay to win and dead on arrival. Guys have been doing this job for over 16 years. Every single MMO feature, every device, has been called pay to win at some point or another. I just look. I just have to stop. You've been at this for 16 years and you're still making the industry worse. Like, you don't realize, like, this is something that I have to explain to people sometimes, like, that I think is hard for them to get, is that in my videos, for example, and even when I'm talking here on stream, I don't just talk from the perspective as a single consumer. I think that would make me kind of limited. And there's plenty of other YouTubers and content creators you guys can watch who are like, who, you know, function like that. I like to take more macro perspectives and kind of look at things more like, you know, an investigation or a mystery. And, you know, just like with most mysteries and detectives, sometimes you're wrong on hunches. Sometimes you're super right. Even without having the information, because maybe you just had enough clues to make the right deduction or whatever. But like, I'll keep echoing this until, you know, the day I die, pretty much, which is that, like, if somebody is arguing away pay to win, just stop for a second and just think, why would someone argue away pay to win? Like, just think about it for a second. I don't make money if something's pay to win. That doesn't affect me in any personal sort of way, right? So why would I argue against it? Or sorry, for it? Meaning, like, this isn't pay to win, or this isn't that big of a deal for pay to win. Like, just think about, put yourself in that shoes. Like, why would you argue that? And you realize, like, you're arguing that because you're doing the job for publishers and developers, which is you're normalizing pay to win so they can introduce even more of it, since they know people like you are going to make excuses for it. Like, I genuinely don't get that. Pay to win is one of the few things that my autism just lets me be autistic about fully, which is that if it gives you an advantage, it is pay to win. Yes, there is a spectrum of pay to win. We can talk about that. But like, when people look at Ion 2 and say, oh, this is pay to win, or EverQuest Legends, oh, this is pay to win, and they're actually giving like decent critiques, which is what I've seen in both cases of these games, why would you hand wave it? You're an outlet. Like, you're a veteran gamer, MMO gamer. Why would you argue for pay to win? Like, it literally doesn't make sense to me. um, Elliot produced a article himself that asked, like, who are the most entitled players in MMORPGs? Um, obviously goes in to talk about PvP because that one time that Elliot got killed back in 2004. But what I actually think is interesting about this discussion is what I find the answer to be. I don't know about you guys in chat, but the answer for me is people who don't even like the genre. That's the most entitled player. The most entitled and problematic player and voice that too many developers listen to is the player who doesn't even like the fucking genre. Like, I've actually talked about this. Josh Strife Hayes has talked about this. Other like, I even think like Lazy Peon, like other YouTube MMO and MMORPG people have talked about this, which is just like kind of most entitled players are the ones that don't even like the game. Like they will argue your game into like a certain kind of like design and then won't even play it. It's like I think, you know, this is a concept that I often refer to as the faux audience. If you guys have heard me mention that before, it's this somewhat like ghost audience that we have designed so much of our industry around, essentially, that essentially ghosted out of our industry and went and played survival games and went and played MOBAs and went and played all these other games that fulfill pretty much what an MMORPG can fulfill, but in very like specific places, like VR chat. Like these little segmented games that are like almost vertical slices of MMORPGs. Those games got success because a lot of the players who didn't even like the game in the entirety of an MMORPG just really like those specific aspects of it. I mean, the survival gaming genre is literally that. Speaking of Notch, Raph and I had talked about this before. Like, Minecraft very much is a virtual world. And many of the servers can get to MMO size, if we're going to be honest. And look at modern GTA. Modern GTA? Modern GTA, you have... Oh, can someone in chat quote me on this? But don't you have servers that are like 600 players? Like on 5M custom launcher? Think about that. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I literally, my brain still, I still nerd out sometimes. I hope you guys do too. Like, I hope you guys nerd out as well over things. You still get hyped about things and whatever else. But I still think that that's crazy how far, like, shit has come. I know, like, we can take the doomy, gloomy route, obviously. Which is that the MMORPG genre itself is not doing super well, right? But look at what we've created from the genre. I think that's like the consolation prize. You know what I mean? Like that I could feel. And it's a hell of a consolation prize because you look around popular gaming these days and it's just like MMO feature after MMO feature after MMO feature. So yeah, we're not quite at the power level we used to be or whatever else. Like we're like damn, what's the old guy in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z's name? Son Goku? But they don't call him that. Kami? No, Kami's the alien guy. Damn it. I'm I'm blank. I'm gonna get embarrassed by a DBZ fan in chat, but yeah, y'all know who I'm talking about? Like the one that originally did the Command Man? The older guy? You can't expect every free-to-play game to be like Path of Exile in terms of pay to win and stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, what they've managed to do is nothing short of like insane. They've managed to be the de facto number 2, if not now number 1 in the space. And they did it without having to resort to pay to win and classic like MMO ways of making money. Not that they are an MMO, but you know what I mean. Hello, is the streamer hostile again? Huh? Is that how you like speak to people? It's like such a strange way to speak to somebody. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce your name because it's like a bunch of letters. But hi there, this is my first time actually watching your stream. I just mostly watch your videos and enjoy them, so I just want to stop by and say hi. Hi. You got one of those names where it's just like your cat jumped on your keyboard. But considering most of my names are troll names, I'm not really one to talk. I feel like all my names have some like dumb backstory to them. But yeah, that was kind of like the brunt of what I wanted to talk about with some of the MMO topics. I guess we can talk about the Star Wars Battlefront video real quick. Um which is that I appreciate the reception on that video, and that also um the discussion was a lot more mixed than I thought it was going to be. And what I mean is that people really fell all over the spectrum. Some people liked the first Battlefront, 2015. Some people preferred the second one because they felt like it had way more in it, and that was the first one they played. Obviously, you had the OGs preferring the old ones, the 2004, 2005 one. Yeah, people like me who liked Battlefront 2, the first one, and then like Battlefront 1, the second one. So it was pretty like mixed, which was cool. Master Roshi. Ah, they do call him Kame because he has the turtle shell thing. Word Kame means turtle because he was turtle sage or sage. Sorry. Sometimes I don't know if I should anime it or not. No, I'm just kidding. Well, last time I watched the stream, you were angry at chat here. I was angry at idiots in chat, and also angry is such a strange thing to use as like when talking. Like, I guess maybe I just operate in like a different kind of headspace, but are people actually getting angry in discussions these days still? Like, seriously. Because the last stream is me making fun of idiots. I don't know how that gets equated to being angry exactly, but I think it just goes to show that like people like to project how they feel about things because they could only imagine making fun of somebody when they're angry, I guess. But oh, I how about this? I'm not that interesting, but I recommend meeting more people in the world. The world will open as an oyster for you, and you'll realize that there's a spectrum of people out there. Um, I mean, he'd be watching me right now if he wasn't working. But one of my best friends um, is a doctor, and one of the most hilarious things about whenever we get to play games together is seeing like his switch from his very official medical like speak to how he speaks with me colloquially. You know what I'm saying? Like kind of like how he speaks, and he helped me realize over time that I've never had that with my audience. And I think that people expecting that sort of decorum, if you will, I actually think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think people expecting that kind of like nerd slayer as the detective, he should be only as he is in the like I actually don't even think that like expectations like that are necessarily like crazy. I think it's more that you realize that people are more than just a particular kind of video they produce, right? Like they have more of a personality than that. And like I don't expect my friend to change to be like an internet troll like me in his real life like medical occupation because I think that would be wrong for the kind of job he has and for the kind of play, you know what I'm saying? Like, and him and I've had this discussion before, and we laugh about it. Um, but I'm a YouTuber who played way too many video games, especially RTSs, MOBAs, And of course, the crown jewel of the channel, MMORPGs. I'm not the role model. I'm just a guy who likes the stuff that I like and happens to spend way too much time studying it. I don't know what that means. Hey, I'm just an observer. And I'm just talking. Like you're already getting emotional, it feels like. Would you consider I mean honestly, that's a good question. Would you sorry, let me actually read it. I'm doing the ADHD thing. Would you consider ever remaking one of your videos? Like your old ones? I've thought about it a lot, to be honest. Especially because I hate a lot of my old ones. I hate my like first five because the vocal quality is so horrible. And like Total Biscuit, I've essentially now become OCD for like how a voice sounds in a video or on a track. So I can't even like listen to them. But I will say that like I mentioned this a few times on stream, like sometimes you'll see people come in and they do one of my favorite red herrings. A red herring is a fallacy that's essentially based on like somebody identifying something or calling something out that essentially immediately notifies everybody else that they don't know what they're talking about. And one of those is people will say like, oh, well, in the early videos, he only covered truly dead games. It's so funny when you're like the creator of the series, reading like people's headcanon. And then when you tell them like, hey, bro, that's not true. They're like, wow, what an asshole. It's like, bro, I'm this is like talking to the guy that made The Watchmen and being like, hey, man, did you mean for fucking the entertainer to be this kind of person? And he tells you and you're just like, it's not true. No. That's how I feel sometimes in the comment section. It was like one of my responses this week was like, I don't know how many more times this will have to be said. And the truth is, never enough, is that the series was never just about literal death. And if people struggle that much to understand that, I really, really recommend reading. And not even just like generic, like read a book. No, just like thesaurus this shit. Dictionary this shit. What you'll find is that words have a lot of meanings. And that's kind of the beauty of them, actually. Is that people have essentially molded them to mean many, many, many different things. So, unless you're more autistic than I am, I hope you don't go around when people are asking to go to a restaurant in public or your friend group and they say, no, I don't want to go there, it's dead. And you respond with, no, it's not. It's not literally dead. There's 3 employees working the floor. But that could also just be like a slang thing. Cause yeah, pretty much where I'm from, everybody just about speaks in a way that says like, hey, this place is dead. This thing's dead. That thing's dead. So it was never meant to be just literally. In fact, I would even argue I think doing it literally would be stupid. I genuinely think it's like dumb to do it literally. It severely limits which games I could cover, right? Because I wouldn't be able to cover games that have essentially been on life support for like 20 years. And there's mini games like that. Mini games that if I suggested to my friends to go play, they would say, this game's dumb. And I would say, why is it dumb? They would say, because it's dead. Nobody's playing it. That was like that's one of the biggest onuses for why I created the series, ironically, was when I was growing up, I was always playing different games, whatever games came free on File Planet and different like free websites. And so you don't just because the game's free, you don't know if it's alive or dead. You see what I'm saying? Like just because you can play it, you don't know how alive the game is. So sometimes you'd play a free game and you would encounter like 6 people. And I remember I always felt like I was kind of catfished when this would happen to me. Because I was always the kind of gamer growing up that I wanted to really get drawn into a world and, feel connected to it. So when I would join into these worlds and they had like 5 people or 4 people or 2 people or 10 people over a massive map playing, I would be like, shit, this game is dead as shit. I can't even do the content in the game. There's not enough players to even do the content in the game. There's not enough players for me to even treat it like a virtual world and socialize with other players. You know what I'm saying? So that was always in the back of my head. And so I would always ask myself, is this game alive or dead? And I would ask my friends the same. Is it alive or dead? My friends didn't know what that meant. They would just be like, oh, well, the game's alive, yeah. But I join into the game and I would send a screenshot and I'm like, this is not alive. And that literally was like me autistically checking everyone telling me, no, this game's alive and banging. Literally, I would just go, like people said it on some random forum. Okay, let me go check the game out. 5 people playing. I'm in the game and I'm just like, what? And like that kept being my experience as like a young kid. Put it on ice for many, many years. And I actually was dating someone at the time and they asked me a question. They asked me like, why did Star Wars Galaxies die? And I realized that I never sat down and actually like broke down why a game I thought was dead when I encountered it, why it died, or any of that sort of stuff. And since I knew so many players who played so many MMORPGs besides just me, because that's the other thing that makes me laugh is that I get that comment sometimes where people are like, dude, Nerd has played every MMO in existence. It's like, guys, if you still think the series is only built on just my back, I mean, you think I'm fucking Megamind or some shit. No wonder why you're mocking me. Because in reality, I have contacts. I have sources. I have developers who follow me. I speak with developers. I speak with hardcore players. I speak with community server runners, private server runners. You see what I'm saying? Like, I can't just rely on my own expertise because I'm not Megamind. I actually have to rely on a game that's built on other players interacting and enjoying something on more than just my own perspective. So sometimes in my videos, you'll see me arguing general perspectives that I don't even agree with, right? But I have to argue that because a large amount of the fan base is arguing that and is okay with that, right? Like I talk about how Star Trek was super pay to win and how it was just like, you know, a loot box game. But then I also argued that the people who play it know that and have essentially made a deal with the developers that, hey, we'll keep supporting your drops to keep your game alive. So you see, like, that's like an example where it can sometimes get really nuanced. Yeah, and XDBD, I think that's the best way I can say your name. That's the perfect example. And I've given this story a few times, but even if I put it in an origin video of sorts, nobody's gonna watch that, right? Like people just care more about like specific cases, which is that the best way I learned this was playing Galaxies after NGE. I went to Loki or Locke. I always forget if it's Loki or Locke. One of the planets in the game. My friend said, hey, he was a guild leader and he said, I want to show you something. And I was like, what? He said, I want to show you our first city. We had the first city on this planet. And this city is like, I forgot how old he told me it was. It was like 8 years old or something absurd. Like, he was like, this city's old as shit. I was like, this is going to be sick. Let's go check it out. I naively thought people were still living there. I don't know why or whatever was going through my head. He proceeded to show me a complete ghost town. And guys, this is the nerdy part of me coming to the surface. I got goosebumps. I started mourning. I felt sad. I felt like I walked through a graveyard and there was a bunch of dead people. And I'll never forget that experience. It was always such a big experience in my life because that's what made me feel like these games are really much, you know, more than just a game. They're other worlds, they're virtual worlds. Was because I was like, man, and I'm walking around and he remembered everyone. He was telling me everybody's story. It was crazy. He was like, this guy used to do this. This guy was the guy that made this. This guy was the dancer here. You know, like he was like telling me everyone's like lore and story. And We couldn't go into most of the houses because they were locked, sadly. And the places we could go inside of, it made me even more emotional. I could see all these memorabilia, people customizing the houses in their own specific ways. It really felt like when you go to a fucking ghost town in real life. And I've been through a few of those. Um, so that was like another like moment of that. Um, that kind of like formed a lot of the like basis of why I was so curious into investigating these kinds of games. But yeah, DC Universe Online. I mean, games that like SWTOR feels like that big time for me. Whenever I'm in that game, I think the city was. Let's see, it was a pre-CU city, so it's like 2001. When I encountered it, I want to say it was 2007 or 8. So it was like 6 to 7 years old, as old as some people's kids. um, but yeah, that was. I remember that was a huge like moment in my life, um, where I realized like, man, there's so much more in these games, you know. Um, so if anything, I think when you look at like virtual worlds and massive or not, you realize like there's so many layers to them that the beauty of them is you can't tell people they're not welcome in a sense, you know? Like, yes, there's a baseline, I do believe, of mechanics that make up what a virtual world is, essentially. At least like the most popular ones. Um, the Deku Mud, like power grind style ones. Um, Ultimately, it's a genre for everybody. And I think that's what made it so alluring, appealing, addictive. People love talking about it. When media gets made about video game development, it typically will get made about online games. You notice that? Um, like Mighty Quest, The Guild, um, The Office had it, South Park had it. You notice like they won't have like a Call of Duty episode, but they had like a WoW episode. Like there's a power to harness and the genre tag MMORPG. Really and truly meaning massive in every way, shape, and form. And everyone wants to harness that in some sort of way. Understandably. But when you're in the industry, it's harder to get the same level of success that like the survival industry gets, right? Meaning like for an MMORPG to try to become better than the survival game, it has to become part survival game, right? And that's a heavy burden. That's what New World gave up on, guys. They just didn't want to try anymore. Remember, I like to mention this a lot, but like when I alpha tested the game, it was a survival game. You could build bases in the wilderness and level them up and shit, and that was the game. Um, they did away with that because I think they didn't want to compete with a survival game on that basis. But then the problem was is that now you're stuck in this middle ground where you're competing with a survival game and theme park games at the same time in this hybrid state. And I mention this a lot, but hybrid games often don't do very well. And they don't. It's the same way that like hybrid products don't do that well. Is because the idea is like you think, oh, it's two of something, so they're gonna get double the appeal. But it just doesn't work that way. Because, for example, why is chess still so popular? Because it, offers a lot of strategic depth. And that whenever you make variants of chess, they end up becoming something far more than chess or different than chess. Meaning that the sanctity, if you will, of chess remains. Because the other games end up becoming like the different variants of chess. But chess was, the first of its strategy kind. Well, I think Go is earlier. But Both of them are pretty fucking old. They're like 500 and 600 years old. um, Look, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna say anything anybody else hasn't already said on the whole PlayStation and Xbox going digital thing. As somebody who owns a lot of old media myself, um, I'm I'm gonna sound kind of lame, maybe, because like I do try to like advocate for certain things, like the pay to win stuff I mentioned, and you know what I mean, like, but I just don't have a strong enough voice to advocate for that stuff to feel like I can really affect any of the change there. And simultaneously, I mean, emotionally, I feel like strongly about it. Like that's actually something that does make me more emotional, if I'm going to be honest, because it sucks to think of losing that like aspect. Um, but yeah, I don't have anything else to add other than it's just sad. I don't have a way forward. I don't think they're going to undo that decision. One thing I will say, and I've been saying this on Discord, is that the writing was on the wall a long time ago. That part kind of confuses me about people's reaction to it lately. Is when I purchased Skyrim from Amazon, it didn't come with a disc. That was in 2011. Like, I know this stuff has existed since before this time now. So I think people are just kind of like, maybe they just didn't encounter it back then or forgot, or I'm not sure. But I think it's still a good thing that people are reacting to it more now. But I guess the problem I'm trying to raise is that maybe if we would have made more of a stink of it back then, it wouldn't have happened now. Because yeah, I mean, Bethesda was doing it back then in 2011. That's 15 years ago. That's a long time ago. EA Origin did it too with Mass Effect. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's some we already we already knew this was coming, I guess. Um Something that I don't necessarily take joy in, despite people thinking of me as like the Grim Reaper or some shit, um, is actually like predicting something to die. Um these days, especially in like the MMORPG genre, that's the safe bet. It's a safe bet to think something's not gonna work. So you're not really even you don't even have to do any detective work. You can just be like, this shit ain't gonna work, and you're Nostradamus. So that's kind of shitty about the current state of things at the moment. Um, but at the same time, I think you know, it goes back to what I said. Yes, the MMORPG genre doesn't have like a bunch of new games coming out all the time. In fact, I saw something that was like interesting on the subreddit I forgot to mention. Somebody said the East is the only market that's keeping MMORPGs alive. And somebody responded and said, and strangulating it or something like that. Which the response would still be, but they kept it alive. So like the West doesn't have much ground to stand on in that sense from a developmental perspective. And consumers can't really be self-righteous there either. Sorry. You guys might not like how Korean games design their monetization, which is fair. Just like any market can respond to that in that way. But they're the only ones that are still making the games. So it's kind of like you have to start to think of like, why is that the case? And also like, what is the West doing besides just like twiddling their thumbs, right? It's true, Turtley, but that's one of the things that I've always been like super autistic about, and I'm fully willing to admit it, is that there's two things that I'm like, I can tell you guys that I'm like super mega autism about. All right, you ready? Um, I'm autistic enough to think that people care about the truth. and I, and you could tell like I've learned to cope with it because I laugh at it because I know it's fucking stupid and that most people don't give a fuck. Um, and I'll even say like even on some of my videos that I've done really well, like the coolest like scoops or mystery parts I solved that I thought people would find cool, people didn't even mention. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's like, as a detective, you're like, isn't this really cool how I solved this? Like the my little board on screen or whatever that pops up. And you realize most people are not really interested in that. They're interested in the story, how things happened, how it looked, the reception, learning a bit about the history of it. And people that are interested in that stuff aren't the same people that are necessarily going to be interested in a mystery. You know what I'm saying? That's why mystery in modern day suffers a lot. Most of the time it ends up becoming just like action because writers and storytellers these days don't know how to really write mystery in the same way. Because it actually takes a lot of effort. You have to go through and think about like plot points and clues and who is withholding information and who isn't and how does the detective come to the mystery like solving part. It's much easier to just write it in a storytelling perspective, abandoning the detective parts and just being like BBC did in later seasons with Sherlock. Oh, he just solved it because he woke up and fucking brushed his teeth. And it's like, wait, what? How the fuck did you solve this shit? But they'll just expect that you have to believe it because it's Sherlock Holmes. I think that's also partly why people don't care about the truth that much. It's actually kind of why I love Detective Conan so much. If you're wondering why I use it as like a basis for my kind of channel so much, is that his whole thing is his slogan is one prevailing truth, right? And that's very idealistic. Obviously, Conan is extremely idealistic if you haven't seen the anime. But and I'm not quite that idealistic if you guys haven't noticed. Um, but it's still like a cool like goal. You know what I'm saying? It's like a thing you aspire for is like the one prevailing truth, finding the true truth behind the story and the case and the game and the failure and whatever else. But it's never really just one truth, let's be honest. It ends up being a mixture of truths, lies and hunches or deductions where you have to, make certain leaps. Yeah, and I've tried to make it more active, turtly, and also act like participate or sorry, involve my audience more too. Because again, I think people they're giving me too much credit if they think I'm just solving all of this on my own. Like there are times where I will have a player send me a message fucking paragraphs long. And this guy happened to be one of the earliest testers of the game. I get lucky like that sometimes, guys. I can't sit here and say it's like I'm just such a big and my network is so far and outreaching. No, sometimes I just get lucky, right? Like, and other times, yeah, I might have a good contact, a developer who tells me something, or like a former developer, or, a content creator, someone who covered this game a lot. I can't just rely on my own intuition because detectives don't typically do that anyway. Like if you look at like popular media, detectives are typically involved with other people, if not like multiple people. They're involved with like a police force, right? So meaning they're not doing all that work themselves because I don't think that that's feasible. I think being able to cover every single angle as a single person is pretty much impossible. And that's why it's so important to me to have the feedback that I get. And that's why I think people sometimes can misunderstand why I am more personal with my audience. That's why I am more personal. Is because, like, as you can see, if you look at some of my videos and in Discord and even in chat, you'll notice that some of these names are some of the same names. And that's because, like, these people who have been here, sometimes for many, many years on my channel, they've been contributing since the beginning, like, and like constantly contributing, giving me more information about things that they know, whatever experiences they've been having. They realize that that's the relationship I want to have with them as an audience member. Like, you know, I don't want it to be like a fan. I want it to be like, no, you're my detective, you're my informant, if you will. Which is kind of cheesy, but it's just, I think that's a cooler, more active level of participation for an audience. And I think that I'm fine with that. I'm a smaller channel and I'm more interested in niche things. So I think I'm also more interested in that kind of audience, the one who's more receptive, the one who, I mean, if you go to my Discord or even sometimes in chat, you can see some of the loyal quote unquote members, the ones who've been here for a long time. They're the ones that disagree with me the most. And that's because they've kind of realized that that's what I covet the most about them, is that I covet their individuality, not the fact that they like drone on about me because I'm like, you know, fucking right or some shit, or because they like me. You know what I mean? Like, um, that does happen a lot, Turtley. So that's why, like, I keep it more fantasy on my channel. Because I agree with you. That, ironically, what you just said is exactly why I didn't become a detective in real life. I remember we had a criminal investigation slash like criminal forensic like class slash like center at my school. And I asked some of my friends about it. I was like, yeah, so tell me about like your experience at it. And when they would tell me, they would always tell me like, yeah, you know, it was all right, or it's whatever. You just kind of do it. And that killed me, guys, when I was like a teenager. I think I was like 14 or something, and I'm like hearing them, maybe 13, but like I'm hearing them say this stuff and I'm just like devastated. I'm like, damn. So it's not cool as fuck. You're not solving crimes and like actually trying to like solve unsolved mysteries and shit. Damn. Yeah, that was my I guess if you want to put it that way, come to God moment where I realized, oh wait, I can't actually be like a real life detective. Uh, so no, for the people who think I'm confused by that, no, I learned 20 years ago. I'm 33 now. I don't still think I'm gonna be a professional detective. No. Sadly, that dream was taken from me. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, my curls look so weird today. I'm not gonna lie. Like this one's like a spaghetti curl, and this one's like a lasagna curl. It's uh, sounds believable. Damn, Turtley dropping some real detective lore. But yeah, this was a fun stream. I think I'm pretty much reached like an ending point pretty soon here. But if anybody wants to get in any questions and or has any topics they want to cover before I leave, we can talk about those. But I'm actually in writing mode right now. I'm trying to write Lord of the Rings Golem, which is just a fantastic story for me because I love Lord of the Rings, but more so just because I feel like there's a lot more underneath the surface for this story. You know, this really is a story of Daedalic Entertainment, the developers, the German developers actually, essentially throwing a Hail Mary, and everybody knows what happened next usually. For y'all who've seen the videos, I should say. Um, one of the worst rated games ever, and one of the worst rated Lord of the Rings game. I think it is the worst rated Lord of the Rings game ever. That sucks though, Turtley. Obviously, I'm glad you got the fuck out. I've been questioned myself actually by detectives, or well, it was a duo, like the movies. No, I'm just kidding. And I didn't do anything wrong either. I didn't get thrown in jail though, or some shit. But um, needless to say, my real life experiences with the law and detective stuff made me feel like, you know what, I'm just gonna be like the virtual world detective. I'll have a different jurisdiction. Yes. uh, oh wow, there's gonna be a show match today for League of Legends Classic. They got TSM versus CLG. Wowzers. That's crazy. I think you were asking about the next video, certainly. I'll let you guys know that before I go. Lord of the Rings Golem. Um, look, I'll just go ahead and tell you guys since you're here. I'm gonna do Marathon next. Um, I've been kind of resisting on it because I just didn't want to be too reactionary. Like, I'm not really like a reactionary YouTuber, right? Like, I'm trying to cover the things that I feel like are actually like interesting stories or glitches in the Matrix. Sometimes I'm quick to cases, but most of the time I'm pretty fucking late. I'm trying to be quicker though on cases that are more like slam dunks. And I know people felt like Marathon was a slam dunk, but I just didn't feel like it was a slam dunk yet. They were still making pretty big efforts, and I wanted to see kind of like how those looked first. Um, and yeah, I think it's at a state now where I can pretty much cover it. And I mean, that's the irony of the channel. Do you guys ever think about this? I know like most people don't care, but it's just funny. Like I'll let you guys know this and then I'll leave. But the irony of the Death of a Game series is I'll simultaneously have people telling me cover Marathon, and I'm telling them no, it's not ready yet. 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 And I'm getting literally hundreds of comments to cover Marathon, and yet not a single one of those comments say it's not literally dead, but who cares? Or someone doesn't counter that, suggestion with, but it's not literally dead. So do you see what I'm saying? Meaning that that argument will always be the argument of a fan of a particular game. It's just always going to be that way. So you can tell who usually is a fan of a particular game because they'll always argue that perspective when it comes down to their game. Um, that's true, Magister. To be fair, it is covered a lot more, and public light as an actual failure. So I will give you that. So people are thinking it should just be a slam dunk for me to cover, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like my series is based off of me making a particular hunch and deduction on a case that I think is going to be a slam shut case. Maybe not immediately, but at some point, and it's trending in that direction, meaning that it's not going to go back into the other direction of being more alive, right? If you notice, Marathon recently did a big PvE push. Mind you, it only lasted like I think a couple of weeks, and people are pissed off by that, which is why I'm going to cover it. Do you see what I'm saying? But I wanted to kind of wait to see what they were going to do there, because I was just curious. Maybe they could have pulled a rabbit out of the hat, but they didn't. And look, I'll be honest. Could I have waited with Civilization to be fair, like the newest one, 7? Probably, because that new expansion that did came out like a month or two after I made my video. But the thing is that if you go and look at the reception of it, what I said in that video stands, which is that people just didn't give a fuck. And I'll show you. Look. See, here was when the update happened. Definitely got a big, pop. But look at the average on the players. They managed to keep the dedicated players who already liked the game or were willing to try it if they made these changes, but they didn't gain any new average players, right? And so now it's like they're kind of doing better, I think, than they were doing in these past 3 months. But they're basing that off of the peak. Oh, no, wait. That's not the peak. It's pretty close to the peak, though. But you can see what I'm saying, like, major update. Boom. But look at the trending of it. Which means that, like, this is after giving the players exactly what they wanted. And yet it still wasn't enough to make the game good. And that was my argument in the video. And that's, I think, too, the other thing is that I think people misunderstand is that I usually have a pretty big argument that I make throughout the video. And it's almost never centered around, is this game dead? Like, we cover the case on a timeline and look for the clues that suggest why a game could be dead or dying. But usually my personal like judgment is something that I have like separate. So I'll say, like, for example, Civilization 7, I said, this new update is going to come out. It is going to happen. But here's the truth. I don't think it's going to do that much. Right? Honestly, the Wilds expansion, that's a pretty fair one. In fact, I'll go as far to say that, like, if the Wilds expansion does resurrect that game in a serious way and it's sustainable, I think I'll cover it on Life of a Game because that'll be an interesting twist. But yeah, like I'm not really sold on it. And in fact, some of my hardcore Monster Hunter fans, or friends rather, um, also aren't sold, but we'll see. But all right, guys, I'll talk to y'all later, and I'm gonna go back to work on Lord of the Rings Golem. So have a good rest of your week and enjoy your weekend, and stay